Hello, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership at Heart podcast. And today I am thrilled to have Billie Jo McCarley on here. I met her, actually, I saw her from a distance. I was speaking at an event and she was on a panel, and she's in Miami, and we'll learn more about that. But I just loved how she spoke about almost like the servant mindset in the public utility area and helping. It was amazing. So I can't wait to kind of dive into this. You know me, I'm always picking out those leaders of the heart wherever I see them. And I do not hesitate to find them and pick them out. So I'm so excited to have you here, Billy Joe. I'm glad you said yes.
Well, thank you for having me here. And once we talked, I had a chance to listen to your book, and there's very, very insightful things that I think every leader could really learn from. So it's a pleasure to be here today.
Oh, yay. Okay. Oh, boy, I want to hear about that. So what was your initial takeaway when you read the book? Was there something that just stopped, right away? You're like, wow, this is a powerful concept. What was it?
So, one thing I've really kind of thought about is inside of leadership, there's this art of compassion and people being heard. And recently I know, everyone being heard and the guise of DEI and some of those worlds, but
Mhm.
the reality is we all need to understand our why. Why are we going to be on a team? What value do we add to an organization? And how does learning about different people's backgrounds continue to make us better? And
Mm,
so you don't have to call it DEI. What you have to
mhm.
call it is listening and embracing each person to make them feel valued so that you can really like that positive momentum. It's like the snowball. And
Yes.
when people understand their why, I think you're better organizationally.
So tell everybody what's your background? Where are you right now in your leadership journey?
Sure. So I'm gonna not try to start too far back, but I was born in upstate New York, and at the time, my dad he worked for a factory and grew up as a union kid. And as part of our union journey, we were transferred to Southern Indiana. So I kind of got used to moving at that point.
Mhm.
And when it was time for college, my parents were it was very firm that we were going to go to college. Didn't really know what that looked like. And math and science and being outside, I was always athletic. I always loved being outside. It kind of lent itself to engineering, but I also had an ROTC scholarship.
Ooh.
So ended up at Marquette University where I got my engineering degree. And so I was just so used to kind of moving around at this stage. Spent 5 years in the Marine Corps and very
Thank you for
interesting.
your service. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. So 5 years in the Marine Corps, you just really start to learn about people from everywhere. And
Mm.
that was really fun for me. When I left the Marine Corps, that's where I'd met my husband and we moved to Tennessee. So I spent my last 20 years in Tennessee, and that's where I started working in the utility landscape. So I had 5 years of officer experience in the military, and then I started over. I was like engineer one at a utility. And so I did that for about 13 years, progressive leadership. And then in 2016 was my first true management gig. And then it's been progressive leadership ever since then. In 2023, there was an opportunity to come down to Miami as the deputy director of operations. And what was really thrilling here is the mayor had committed to, hey, Miami-Dade, we've maybe not evolved as quickly as we need to. We need to have better training programs. We need to say, okay, whatever got us here, now it's the next step. What is Miami-Dade going to look like in automation, training, professionalism? How do we be the best utility in the world? And so who wouldn't want to be part of that?
Hmm.
So Miami was new to me, and it's still a little new to me every day, but there's no shortage of opportunities, but it's a lot of hard work, but I love the challenge. I love the challenge.
Yeah, I was thinking about, hearing the panel, just, there's so much that we don't understand. And just like the end users of the work that's done in the utilities, right? We just don't get it. And then and then seeing kind of the level, the stressors of that's put on the people that are having to execute to ensure that we have the utilities that we want, like the things that are working for us as we just like turn on the lights in our house or whatever, right? The water that we drink, all those kinds of things. And so I just think it was really enlightening for me to see it. And then again, to see the amount of, just the heart and the passion behind serving and all of that was really enlightening to me. So I'm curious for you as a leader, gosh, because that was a long journey. And I love even the diversity of your journey and just your background. What would the people that report to you now in that role here at Miami-Dade, what would they say about your leadership style?
I think the important thing to me, and I don't remember who wrote the book, but the why behind the why, and treating everybody as a person. And so let's have a common mission. The common mission is the common mission, but you need to understand what's going to make everybody tick along the way. So if you take, the best of everybody and then push them to that area,
Mm,
then I think overall you can achieve great things. There's anytime you come into a new place, there's the bull in the china shop philosophy of it must all be broke, so we're going to break it apart and start over, or we're going to do the bottom 10%. If we can fix 10% at a time and just keep getting better and getting better and getting better, then I'm more of that one. Let's like continue to polish those edges to become
mm,
better organizationally. I think the biggest thing that my people would probably say is I'm probably sometimes to a fault, too honest and too blunt. So you know what's on my mind. So I try to be transparent, but I also try to be fair.
mm,
And I'm willing to be fair sometimes if it's not good for certain people, but it's right for the organization. And I truly do believe that while I'm here, it is my responsibility to provide the best quality water and wastewater services to the people of Miami-Dade County.
mhm,
And every decision we make, that's got to be the guiding principle, is what's right for our customers. And I've told some folks in the past that I'm not going to shortcut processes to get them an added advantage if that's not what's right for our customers. Because
mm,
I'm a woman of faith, and ultimately I've got to lay my head down every night and not have to ask for forgiveness. And even at
mm.
that, we're going to err, even despite our
Yeah.
best efforts, we're going to err. But that's my guiding principle.
I love that. So there's two things that popped to my head. One is, what role did your like Marine Corps life play in your leadership and just how you show up now? And then the second thing is, what role does your faith play? So particularly in kind of a something that can be considered a political environment, something that can be considered like again more public life in a way. I'm curious to know. So on both of those fronts, I'm curious to know what role they play.
Yeah, so great questions. My time in the Marine Corps, it really taught me one, how to be a professional. Yeah, you just when you're 23, 24 years old and suddenly you recognize that, I'm in the middle of nowhere in Honduras in charge of 30 Marines and we're building a bridge. It's like, wow. Like, what was I doing there? I think back at it like 20 years ago, it's like I didn't know my 23-year-old self was eligible to do this job. But it's structure, it's chain of command, and it's also really trying to understand the bigger purpose. Because in the moment, like we know what we need to do, but where we're trying to be when we were in Honduras, part of this is we were trying to build good relationships with the people of Honduras because at the time we had lost the Panama Canal. And
Mhm,
so we wanted to have a safe place. If we ever needed to have a military base in Central America, we could. So
mhm,
by doing some hurricane relief in Honduras, the bigger picture is we need as Marines to be in Honduras and make them want us to be there. And
mm,
so you show up,
mhm,
you take pride in who you are, but you remember who you represent at every time.
mhm,
And I made
mm,
mistakes. I'm not gonna lie, I made a lot of mistakes growing up and learning from that.
mhm,
I think faith wise, it's continued to recognize that we all have a greater good and we should all love each other. And
mm,
everyone's a person, Everyone has feelings, and it's just understanding who they are and what their motivation is. And, you know, I'm a woman of faith, but that doesn't mean I only align myself with other people of faith. I love,
Hmm.
it's our job to love
Yeah.
everybody.
Yep.
But what what gets me crosswise would be the people that maybe are disingenuous. Those are going to be the ones that I'm really going to struggle with over time. Genuine people are very important to me, and I like to surround myself with genuine people. We're not perfect.
Mm,
We all can grow and learn from each other.
mm. I'm curious to know for you, like where did your drive to lead come from? Was that like do you think it stemmed from like a parent? Did somebody push you? Where did that come from?
Wow. Interesting was the first time I ever had an opportunity to get into management per se. Like, it was where I made an active choice. At the time, there was an opening coming up, and I had all of my peers of who could potentially be in that role. And personally, I felt like I could do it better. And so I feel like I really believe in ownership. And this is probably some more Marine Corps stuff. And it's also the way I was raised, is you own your problems and you're responsible for, despite all the obstacles, finding a solution. And at the time, of all the other qualified individuals in the room, I felt like I was the most qualified to have that ownership to continue moving whatever our strategic plan was. And so I've always, I guess I don't have as much tolerance maybe for people who don't have that same desire to do what's right for our customers.
Hmm.
And being around people that have that mission, I can get behind.
Mm, I love it. I love it. It's interesting. A couple things that pop in my mind there. One is, what do you do to counterbalance that like very clear path of ownership and meaning like I'm owning this path as solution when you might also encounter exhaustion, mental anguish, stuff that might just be going on with you, like energy wise, all that. What are the things you do to kind of fill your cup? And we talked about this when I was there, speaking to the group, but what is the thing that you do to fill your cup to balance that? Because there's a lot of pressure to be the person who is always the one owning and who's wanting to see it through, right? And because there's things that take part in us as humans just internally. So I'm curious there. So let's start there, and then I can ask you another thing after that. So what do you do to kind of fill your cup? What's that counterbalance for you that says like, I'm so focused on the mission, I'm getting this done, I'm seeing it through, I'm the owner, and at the same time, what do I do to kind of right? What do I do for me?
Yeah, so let's talk about the work side first. And I think the first part of this is, as a leader, you got to understand where your pinch points are, because ultimately you need to be leading. So if you're getting bogged down with other things, how do you build a team? So when you come in, what are those five most important things that you have to do every day? And then you can't do all five of those things every day. So what member of your team do you know that you can trust to think about that? And build that team with the people that are focused on making sure that you're filling all those gaps. You can still dive in, and we as leaders, we know what we like.
Hmm.
And so when we find the piece we like, we may dive into that and spend 4 or 5 hours in a day while we omit the things we may not like. And that's not what's best for our employees. And so it's building the team of everyone understands their role, and you know that somebody else is going to stay laser focused on whatever that is a primary goal, so you can keep moving everything forward. And I'm
Mm.
not completely there yet with my team, but we're building a good team to move forward with that.
What
Now,
are some of the tools you put into play for that? Like just practically for people who are listening, when you're trying to build up this team and you're trying to get them so they're kind of high performing, like you're all kind of flowing in the same direction. What are some of the tools you use to get there?
yeah, so kind of starting on the front end, it is, I think you got to watch. You got to watch a little bit and understand who's with your team and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then have those conversations. Once you have those conversations, then you really lay out what the goals are for how you get there. and then having those touch points. And it's very candid, honest conversations for that. And but you don't lose your eyes on the prize. But then when you find that you're having the same conversation over and over again, that's where sometimes you have to sit back and say, okay, maybe we're wrong seat on the bus. So very tough conversations. But when you're at a point where you see somebody continues to work and work and work, but they never feel like they're good enough, then obviously they've got something they can bring to the table, but maybe whatever seat they're in is not the right seat for them. And so it's being open and honest enough to have that conversation to say, hey, like, I see you're here. This is where I need you to be. And those are the hardest conversations because some folks are so prideful in how they've got to where they've gotten that they've maybe never had the conversation of someone kind of coming back saying, you're really, really good at a lot of things, but I need you to get here if you want to move to that next step. And, beating it in someone's head is not successful. It creates a lot of negativity. And so it's just trying to have those, I truly believe it's the gentle conversations.
Mhm.
It's not a firm in your face change today or else, because that's kind of an authoritarian kind of leadership. And I really don't believe in it.
And I love that we have that too, given you were a Marine, what you would think, like as a Marine, you'd think it'd be like, oh, like we'll get to it and just get it done kind of thing,
Yeah.
versus some of that softer edge. Well, that's just like that is a preconception. Like most people think that way, right? I am learning along the way that that is not true in many cases. And that also this is kind of goes back to pigeonholing as well. When you're pigeonholed because you're in one place or another, you look, whatever it is, whatever that is, the experience is. I think the important thing is to get to know the person individually, so you can see that they're not just some shell of like a pigeon, just a character. You're actually a person that lives a certain way, and so I can appreciate that. And so I'm curious to know too, like, are there ever times, or has there ever been a time where you're like, it's not even the right person, it's not even just about being on the wrong seat on the bus, but it's also just like not having the right person in the bus? What it were like, what are those, what is that, if you've had that, what does that conversation look like for you? How do you, because it's so interesting. I'm in the middle now. I'm going to be starting to write my next book. People are like, wait, what? You just finished one, but I'm doing one on teamwork. And it's about building unstoppable teams and banishing burnout as a result of that. So it's really this idea of really leaning as leaders, leaning on the team, and how do we get the most out of the team, and how do we make sure we're again rowing all in the same direction. So I am curious to know, like when you're looking at the bus and the makeup of those on the bus, how do you say, and what would that look like for you to say, I'm not sure that this is the right bus for you, not even just the right seat on the bus.
Yeah, I have had those conversations, and at the time I feel like I made the best decision for the group. If I had to do it over, would I do it again the same exact way? I don't know. But when I first got to Miami-Dade, there's a team of individuals that maybe they had not had the same conversation of with my leader as far as here's where we're going to be focused. These are the major goals. And so their primary focus was maybe not aligned with the goals and objectives I had.
Mm.
And so it was listening and understanding, and some folks, you can say, hey, I think we have some areas that we just need to polish. And with those areas, here's a list of goals I need you to try to accomplish. And we'd have those touch points. And in one or two situations, it's not working out. And so in some situations, you find another location for them. In
Mhm.
other opportunities, maybe you try to find a soft landing.
Yeah. Oh, I
You
love
treat
that.
them with respect, and you figure out what's the best soft landing that we all have dignity and nothing comes across disrespectful. Did have another situation where I just didn't have enough time to kind of give a leadership development journey.
Mm,
And I did have to part ways, and it was very uncomfortable. But I also recognized trying to, what square peg, round hole situation,
mhm.
the more you try to shove square peg in a round hole, it just makes everyone miserable. So it's understanding ultimately what that goal is and pulling the plug at the right time.
Mm.
And
What I love about what I love about this discussion right here, just right here, I got to just pause for those who are listening, is there's that focus on it's not like it's like with layoffs or people that are, let go or whatever that is. It's it hurts. It's going to hurt, period. It's going to hurt. It's going to have waves on all sides. But this concept of dignity and respect are really at the core. Like if we're doing things in our communications and our interactions that leave people with their dignity intact. So when there's a layoff that has to happen, when you do have to terminate someone, it's going to hurt, period. Like the pain is going to be there. There's just no way around it. But in the end, did they feel like their dignity was taken away from them, or actually were they able to maintain that? And did they feel like a human at the end of the experience, or did they feel like just like a piece of something on the ground kind of thing? That's huge for me too. So I knew I liked you when I heard you at that panel. Just like again, stating it as it is, but still at the core of whatever you're saying, you still want to have that end goal. And I do think that's missing a lot of times, and even like current big, huge layoffs you hear in global workforces or stuff that you see in the news. It's like this level of not imparting or letting people know that having their dignity intact is a human to human experience, isn't it?
it is. I mean, you spend most of your waking hours at work, and I appreciate hard work. I mean, we've had some days where you just don't know if you're going to be able to accomplish that goal. And it's going to be physically exhausting, it's going to be mentally exhausting, but you're doing it to best serve your customers. So then if you're that boss that is mentally playing mind games with your employee that whole time or making them feel like less of a person, what do you really accomplish? Like, is that the kind of company you want to work for? And for me,
Mm,
it's not.
mm. How would you define, just in your own words, leadership with heart? What does it look like to you?
Leadership with heart, in the simplest form of it, it goes back to understanding everyone we work with is a person and trying to change the lens of it's not how I see it, but how is that person seeing me? And so if I have that magical superpower where I'm able to look at every situation through what's best for our customers, what is that employee looking at? What am I looking at? What is, all those stakeholders, if you can try to look at it through different lenses and make your decision based off that and then be able to explain it to the team, then to me, that's leadership with heart. And if you build that reputation, then you would think when you need something right now, the military instant obedience to orders, when you
Mm,
need that, if you built a reputation that people trust you, then even when things don't make sense, they're going to be more willing to work with you.
mm. I'm just geeking out. I have to kind of let this is resonating with me, and I have to just let it kind of flow over me. And I hope, those of you who are listening hear this too, because, there's also often a confusion between like leadership, heart caring leadership, and the idea of holding people accountable, expecting things to get done, having clear expectations and like holding, kind of like saying A, B, C, and then like letting them do it with, empowering them to do what they need to do. But at the same time, having these expectations that are very clear and that there are going to be like there are consequences maybe to the entire team if the thing doesn't get done, but at the same time doing it with care. And the other concept of or the conflict, people think there's a conflict, and I don't think there's a conflict between it, but this other idea of showing them if you did the hard work up front, which is that, developing the trust, showing the care and concern, really leaning into listening to them, then when, like you just said, when it's time to be like, hey, rubber meeting the road now, and we've got some seriously big things that we got to get done, and I actually don't have time, like right now, to listen or time for you to fight me. Like it has to get done because it has to get done, right? You can do that because you did all the other stuff. And I think that there really is a confusion in the world because I talk about caring leadership and I talk about leadership at heart. It just sounds so soft. And I'm like, no, but you don't understand. It's the stuff that you're talking about, Billy Joe, that says like, I did all of this and I continue to do it around all the times where I have to kind of draw a hard line that says like this thing has to get done by this day or else these are the ramifications for our residents, for us, for everybody, right? So I think people need to know that you can have both, that both can coexist within a leader, within a leadership team, within an organization, within a culture, and it's not either or, right?
And you just hit on something I think is huge, is if you've laid out the expectations and your employees aren't meeting those expectations and there is no accountability, fair accountability, then you're hurting the team because everyone else is watching. And when everyone else is watching and they see that there is no accountability for poor performance, then people are going to watch and people are going to start to do the same. And then I think there's a song called A Slow Fade. And that slow fade, suddenly you wake up one day and you're like, how come all my people, or how come our team is underperforming? And it's just when you let a little bit get by, then everybody else is kind of letting a little bit get by until you don't understand what you have. So people think it's tough to hold people accountable and have those conversations, but when you're not doing it, then it's even worse.
Mhm. And it's actually carrying leadership to be the person that has the tough conversations, to hold the person accountable, to set clear expectations, even if you co-create the expectations together. It's actually caring to do that. Caring isn't all this like soft, squishy, gushy thing. It is the thing that says, sorry, the line is being drawn. It's drawn because in order for the team to succeed and the organization to succeed, for us to meet these things for our customers, our residents, we have to do these things. And we care about the residents and we care about each other. And because of that, everybody has to be responsible to do their part. And in this case, I don't necessarily see you doing that. I actually see this thing happening. And so I would have the same exact conversation if it was this person or any other person outside the team doing this. It just happens to be today, it's you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And I
Exactly.
think that that's caring. It's just the way it is. And I think so. Just this is a really powerful point you bring us to, I think, to be able to show I really am I'm seeing this thing. I'm seeing not only like the DEI front, anti-DEI front that you're seeing out there. It's not even just that. I think it's bigger. And it's kind of like we don't want to coddle people. We think this we're like past the point of care. And now we need to go to get objectives done and we need to go meet our and it's like if there's this is a thing that coexists together. I don't think you're getting this. If you do the things that we're talking about here, you will get these people who are bought in even when the times are tough.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is a rule in Miami-Dade County of everything we publish, it should have Creole, Spanish, and English speaking because that is representative of the communities we serve. It's such a diverse community.
Mhm.
And there's days that, I don't understand everyone's backgrounds and what drives them in their decisions. But man, I love the journey of watching and learning and understanding. Like, if I go to a restaurant with any of my employees, I'm usually like, you order for me because I don't even know what is good.
Love it.
If I go to a restaurant that's like, maybe a Cuban restaurant, and I'm used to like chicken nuggets and French fries per se, like, my total kid
Yeah,
mode. And I try to order that, I'm not gonna like that. But
exactly.
if you don't dig the journey of getting to know people and who they are, then I'm not gonna say shame on you because some people they're very content. But I love learning what makes people tick.
So from your perspective, when we think about, you know, what would be great to build kind of a high performing team, a team that, gets things done, does it together, still holds respect for each other. What do you think like the number one thing is that they should focus on doing?
So, and I'm trying to make sure this is number one because number one is it's such a singular thing.
It
But
is, it really is. Something that just automatically you're like, oh, if I had to like boil it down to like this is the thing. If you have to give me two, that's great too. But I'm just thinking like if you can think of these would be the most important things. And maybe what you can do is give me one from your perspective, like as a leader of the team, the team that people are looking at you as the guiding person. What would you think the number one important thing for you to do to keep that team, the wheels are turning and it's in line? And then I would say just as a team as a whole, what do you think would be important for them to do?
right, so I'm gonna do three.
Okay.
The first one is I truly believe in an extreme ownership. Don't let roadblocks just make you stop and not get it over the finish line. The second part of this, and it's very complementary, is having enough flexibility to understand everyone's perspective, that it's not my way or the highway.
Mm,
Every now and then you need to flex a little bit. You don't, there's a saying, you don't always have to be right to be right.
yeah.
Well, you get in public government type work, and if you don't embrace that, it's huge. So it's ownership, but understanding everyone's perspective to solve those problems.
Mm,
And then I thought I had one more, but it's just building a team of filling those gaps in, making sure everyone kind of can complement each other.
mhm. Yeah, and I think at the core of this, it's like at the core of all of my work is the concept of listening. Talked about listening a lot when I was with you all, and really truly listening without the filter, which is what I love. What I'm hearing about what you're saying too is just like if I get to know the person, I'm going in with curiosity. I'm just like I just want to know more about them. I'm not trying to go in with my filter. Or I'm not trying to place judgment on whoever they are and whatever they're saying or whatever. But I'm curious to know who they are. So if I lean in with that curiosity, it's easier to achieve all the other things that you're talking about too, right? Because you just can't otherwise we make a lot of assumptions about who we are versus really knowing who the other people are.
Yeah, and one thing we as leaders, we're very risk adverse when it comes to public utilities. And when you come into a new job, you're going to find that some people have their own philosophy on how to get things done, and it may not agree with your philosophy. And instead of immediately out the gate saying, we're going to do it my way, if you can have enough patience to watch and see if their way works and maybe even learn, then that's very powerful. As long as you allow that without any fatal flaws, anyone getting hurt, any risk of providing an unsafe service to our customer. But even though we've had things that are successful for us, if you're willing to have enough patience to watch other people learn, then sometimes not only do you grow, but they feel more empowered because we didn't try to change them.
Mm,
I will say this because I am the parent of a 20 and 22-year-old, and I've been married for 23 years now, I think.
congrats.
And as you go through those journeys, especially, and I'm sure you've had this with raising kids, is you have to step back and let them figure out who they are as a person. And the journey's pretty fun. And I feel like there's a lot of similarities in parenting and leading.
So true. I use a lot of knowledge. I have four kids, and one of them just accepted an appointment to the United States Naval Academy.
Wonderful. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And it is interesting to see his mindset and just what he's thinking as far as his future and all those things. And so, and then all the other kids, like again, one graduating this year and she's going into missionary work, and then there's the kid, and then it's like all of them. And you're right, like letting go. And I do agree. I love that idea. I talk about in the listening. I talk about decoding, which is that time when we are pausing, we're either researching, we're processing, we're involving more people, we're doing something that just says like slow the process down instead of just acting on what we hear or what feedback. And so it's like slowing it down. And so what I'm hearing from you is this, it is that when we slow the process down and don't find the need to solve for the problem for the person, they start to uncover their own solutions. They start to be their own problem solver. They do the critical thinking their own. And now they're starting to see, oh, what are my outer limits? Maybe I don't have the outer limits I thought I did. Because they're able to kind of have this level of self-discovery in that place that you're allowing them to, like, you're by you holding back, you're giving them that space to grow and learn. And I think that's awesome. I love that idea of like hold off a second and watch them learn. I'm like, ha, I've never heard of that before. That's brilliant. I love it.
I'm not saying I did it day one.
Yeah, I know. I know. This is a learning experience. It's so funny. I'm like, I would tell my kids, you really need to celebrate your wins and you really need to do the thing. And I'm like, but I didn't do that until I was like, dang, late 40s. Like it took me a long time to get to the point where I really stopped focusing on the next thing. And I could say in the process or in the moment that the thing that just happened was so, that was great. And I could say, I'm going to celebrate. I had to make myself celebrate it. Right.
Oh,
So it's just
exactly.
interesting learnings that we get. And I think we have to do the same thing with our team. And I agree with you. There's so much. I don't want to sound like I'm parental in it, but I do feel like there's so much alignment with just like kind of all the rules and the ground rules for parenting happens to be a lot for folks in the workplace too. Particularly if you see it, the relationship, well, number one, as a relationship, not as just a partnership, but you see it as a relationship. And also if you see it as a give and take, and that you might, and then as a leader, like you have an obligation to create a fertile soil for growth to take place, which is the exact same thing we'd be doing for children. You create the soil for the growth to take place. And so if you see your role that way, then you can see where the parallel exists too, I think, right?
Oh, exactly, exactly. I've got a son and a daughter, and my son he's a college baseball player, and this is his fourth year in college. And just to watch and listen to his journey, and especially you go
Mhm.
from high school being like that guy,
Oh
and then
yeah.
you go to college and suddenly you're not that guy. And it's like continuing to encourage, but then also like watching that journey. And then with my daughter, she's kind of gone through her journey of she has this natural gift of sales. And like she served at restaurants and stuff like that. And every time I see something, the tips that she makes and like the people that she works with, they're like, man, she's got a great heart because she can go to a table and see the mood of a table and modify her personality to meet their needs.
Mm,
And
that's impressive.
so once upon a time, she was talking about what kind of work she wanted to do. I was like, you don't understand. That is God's gift to you. That is
Hmm.
not natural. Lean in on it.
Yeah.
And when you see people's natural gift, and I think it's important to call it out because she probably just thought, this is just how everybody is. I was like,
Hmm.
that's not how I am.
I know. I was just talking to my son about this just yesterday, actually, because he got a couple awards at school, let's say senior awards, and then he was saying, "Well, I think if you put anybody else in the position, they would do the same. I just, maybe I had a little bit more opportunities here and there." And I'm like, "No, I don't think you really actually get this. That as many times as you said yes to serve when it was like very inconvenient, most people would not do that. Like you again, like you were saying, you take it for granted that not everybody's going to show up in the way that your strength spot is, and like you said." Lean into that because that's the thing that is the thing that differentiates you. And by the way, it'll differentiate you going into your adulthood and now like into the military and all those things, right? It's going to continue to differentiate you because not everybody's going to say yes. Right. And in her case, not everybody's going to see the mood and be able to shift like that. That is a gift. And she can take that and use that anywhere in any kind of place in her life. I mean, this is the crux of, I think, even just work, that we try to compartmentalize our relationships to say, like, this is work and this is your personal life and this is how we want to deal with you. And I think the most effective leaders that will be like the future of work, looking in the future, are going to be the ones who say, I'm no longer going to require you to compartmentalize the things that are happening. We're going to kind of deal with you as a whole person, and I'm going to like build my relationship with you as who you are as a whole person. Because I think if you bring all of those aspects with you into our 40 hours a week plus with each other, and I meet you where you're at in that moment, we're going to be a much more like a higher performing team anyway, because you know, I know you in and outside of work, and I want you to bring your giftedness all the way around to where you're at this 40 to plus hours with us. So I do believe your kind of leadership is the kind of leadership that we are going to like. If you continue to bring up people who are that kind of way, are you perfect? No, I'm not perfect. No, like none of us are perfect. But I do think that trend towards I'm going to meet you where you're at. I'm going to take you as a whole person. I'm going to get curious about who you are, even if I don't agree with what you are or how you are. Like, right? I don't have to, this is not about agreement. It's about
Right.
understanding and how do we get the maximum benefit of all of us as whole people inside the workplace. And I think that's going to be our journey going forward. So I feel like super blessed to have had you on here. I'm so excited. I'm glad I asked you. I didn't ask everybody. I just asked you. And I saw, went, oh, I like her. I want her on here because I do think this is adding a different depth than what that I've had on here before. So I appreciate you, Billy Joe, a lot for that.
I appreciate what you do. I appreciate the education and encouragement because it's, you know, everybody's not going to take 100% of what we talk about today and say,
Hmm.
okay, how do I implement that in my daily life? But it keeps you thinking. It keeps the brain moving on how do we continue to best support our people, to best lead our people, and learn to be a better leader every day. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And for those who are listening, hopefully you share this far and wide and you think about the ways that you could take even just one new thing and get better from this. But I think this is the future of work. So pay attention to this trend of the whole person is not going away. I think it's going to be elevated, particularly as we're looking at AI and all the things that there's so much disruption that's happening so that people are going through a lot of emotional stuff. And we're going to have to figure out how do we meet people in that moment to get more out of them so that the team is amplified and also to make sure that they're leaning into kind of what they need to center themselves and us as leaders as well. So excited to have this conversation. Definitely share it far and wide. And again, thank you so much, Billy Joe, for being on here. And thanks to everybody for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.